This is an audio journal of the young men who will not accept the decline of Western civilization. Today's voices are Gabriel Schwepler, Joel Schwepler, William Gibson, and I, your host, Micah Sheldon. Join us on our quest for the noble spirit through the path of virtue and valor. Today's episode is titled The Unseen World. You see, we live in a time of unparalleled technological achievement and material comfort. This security has lulled us into a sense of blindness to the unseen world that affects you just as much, sometimes more, than the physical one. The unseen world, even if you don't believe in it, believes very much in you and still can very much affect you. Every single one of us is plagued by things coming from the spiritual world that we are vulnerable to, we are blind to, and we are allowing these things to act on us, and we don't understand what's happening. Now, of course, mental health, chemical pills, medical science, all of that stuff is very good, and it's good that we have them. But I think a lot of damage has been done when people attribute everything in the human experience to physical things and whether or not you can fix those with pills and with physical actions. As someone who experienced a lot of difficulty in life in the mental realm, it was very enlightening to me to become aware of just how much the spiritual world impacted me. And I believe that the more we become aware of it, the better and more efficient, the smoother our lives are able to be. I really want to challenge you as we begin this podcast to start looking at the world not as a place of atoms and chemicals, but full of unseen little elves and angels and demons and goblins trying to change things in their favor. Gabe, you had some thoughts on these.
So first off, we need the spiritual world to be able to perceive or interpret anything. I think the spiritual world is just deeply connected to any motives that we have, anything we do. But the other thing that I would want to say is that demons are a much clearer picture of, for instance, mental health problems than the picture of chemicals in the brain. So I think demons are a better picture because within the image, there's already a course of action implicit. So for instance, if I tell you the reason that you're feeling these temptations is because of an imbalance of chemicals, right? If I tell you that, okay, that's the reason. It's not immediately obvious what to do about an imbalance of chemicals. I mean, sort of the natural course of action is, well, maybe I need to take some more of the good chemicals, right? Take some pills. That'll make me feel better. So that's the natural course of action that we take based on this worldview. However, if I say there's a little goblin in your brain trying to get you to do bad things, the inherently obvious thing to do is to resist that. So things like prayer, going to church, all this kind of stuff, it just comes more naturally based on the worldview.
Yeah, I think something that is really, really important to change in the way that you view the world is in the mental health narrative. If your brain is making you think certain things, if you're having certain dark thoughts, there must be something broken with your brain because your brain is a machine, right? So if your brain is a printer and it's coming out with, the words all in the wrong place or the ink all messed up, oh, well, it's broken. It needs to be fixed. There's something wrong with the internal parts. And I really want to challenge that mindset. I'm not saying that's completely wrong. Obviously, your brain literally is an organ. It has neurons and everything. It is a machine. But instead of a printer, I want you to consider it as a radio, where it is broadcasting the inputs put into it. It is receiving input from somewhere else. I guess printers do too, so that's a bad example. But if a bad song starts playing on your radio, you don't take the radio apart to figure out what's wrong with the radio.
Right.
The radio is working as intended, but you need to change the channel. And so what I really want to stress to people that maybe are experiencing dark thoughts or despondency or temptations that almost seem unnatural or too much oppressive. I really want you to stop seeing yourself as broken and damaged goods and start seeing your brain as working as intended. It's just being bombarded from outside by a hostile force.
Here's another example of why this is a worldview that is not helpful. So let's say I'm not just a materialist. I take it one step further. I am a visibilist. I only believe in what I can see. So I look outside and I see all these trees, okay? And this thing that I see is the trees are all bending down at the same time and fluttering all their leaves simultaneously, perfect unison. Now, the weird thing is, these trees are not touching each other. So I have to ask the question, if all that exists is what I can see, how are they figuring out how to all bend down at the same time? So I would have to assume something like, maybe there's some underground network of roots where they are, sending each other electrical signals, and there's this big plan that they all get together and make to bend down at the same time. Okay, so it ends up being a very roundabout and complex explanation. Whereas as soon as you introduce the concept of wind, you have this much clearer explanation, okay? So the trees, like, they're not even thinking. They're just responding to this wind. So you can see how having this invisible thing as an explanation for what's happening actually makes it's much more simple, it's much more elegant.
I think the trees bending to the wind is the perfect example because it is an unseen outside force acting on the natural world.
Yeah.
And you might not be able to see the wind, but you most certainly can see which way the wind is blowing. It's in the Bible that Jesus refers to the Holy Spirit as the wind.
Yeah.
So I'm not
John
the first
3.
person to come up with that. When you start viewing your life as, yes, physical things are real, but they are acting under sort of unseen forces, it gives you a much more complete view of the world. The materialist worldview is technically correct, but it is incomplete. Right? Like, yes, you might have mental health issues and you might have a chemical imbalance in your brain, but we're leaving out the little goblin that is trying his hardest to get you to kill yourself. So I think what's important is instead of just seeing the world around us or our mind as this neutral space, really start seeing it as full of other actors, both good and evil. And we have to, of course, work with the good and reject and resist the bad. Will, you mentioned an attitude of resistance. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. Part of why I resonate with this worldview so much and why this made such like a big change in my life and in my heart and allowed me to eventually escape depression is because, like you said, Micah, like when it's just chemicals in your brain, it kind of just implies that you're broken.
Right.
Right. And in a sense, there's truth there because of the fall, right? And there's truth there because we have sinned willfully and we've resisted God and that's entered our hearts, but it's not the whole story.
Right.
And I think so easily that view can simplify to like the whole story is condemnation.
Right.
Right. We mentioned this last time. Like, what's the difference between condemnation and conviction?
Right.
Condemnation just says you suck.
Right.
Conviction says you suck. But we can go somewhere from there.
Yes.
Like conviction gives you a way forward as well. And I think just that worldview of like just your brain's broken, it doesn't lead you to change and growth. Not easily.
Right.
Because it just says you're broken. But this other path forward, there is in this idea a story being told to me that there is a way out and the goblin can die.
Yeah.
And I don't have to obey the goblin.
Right.
If I am my own actor and the goblin is a different actor, and then there's an implication there that like I'm separate from my goblin.
Right.
Which is what I love so much about the mindfulness perspective. Like you are not the river of your thoughts and your emotions.
Amen.
You're the guy sitting on the bank of that river, watching it happen.
Right.
And you can go, I like that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
What's that doing in my river?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And for me, that's so important because that lets me have a healthy self-image that isn't like narcissistic.
Yeah.
Because if you're broken, the only way around that is to either somehow fix yourself, which we can't, or accept it into despair, or deny it, and pretend you're hot stuff anyway. I think so much of it is the story, right? The
Yeah.
story of the unseen world is telling us is that there is something to resist,
Yeah.
right? And we have, I think, all resonated with this in our lives.
Absolutely.
And that's why Lord of the Rings matters. Because it resonates with meaning that's already in our life. It's not like
Right.
a new way to look at what's happening. It is what's happening.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Sauron wants to undo all that is good. He wants to
Right.
enslave a hobbiton
Right.
of all things. And it resonates in my heart that like that is something else that is threatening Hobbiton.
Yeah.
That is threatening Middle Earth.
It's an outside force.
Yes, right? But that it can be resisted.
Yeah. It can be
That's part of the great danger of the lie of materialism.
Yeah.
Is it acts as if there is no outside force.
Right.
And you cannot resist it
Right.
if you don't believe in it.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's a very quaint saying, but I really like it where they say the greatest lie the devil ever told was that he didn't exist.
Yup.
You know, he really wants to do evil in your life, and the easiest way for him to do what he wants is for you not to know that he's there. I really like that analogy you made of your thoughts being like a river, and you are actually separate from them. You are not your thoughts. If you are experiencing dark thoughts, despondent thoughts, maybe some really messed up thoughts, you are not your thoughts. And you are not even necessarily responsible for your thoughts. They might be coming from somewhere else. You are responsible for how you process those thoughts.
Yes.
But I think a really good way, like Will's River, you know, if your mind is a room or a house, a space, like we've said before, and you see trash everywhere or it's on fire, you know, you put out the fire, you clean up the trash. But what we're talking about now with the spiritual world is we're going to find the dude who's setting my house on fire.
Yes.
We're going to make sure he can't keep coming back in here.
Let's keep watch.
Right,
And next
right.
time, stop him from setting it on fire.
And if I have a roommate I don't know about, like what if there's a hobo living in your house and he comes out at night when you're or during the day when you're at work and then he's leaving dishes in the sink? It's like, who's leaving these dishes in the sink? Let's find him, you know? Let's kick the hobo out or let's at least get him to not leave dishes in the sink. Make him sign a roommate agreement, you know. But definitely modern psychology with this idea of, oh, you're creating those thoughts. You are those thoughts. No, you're absolutely not.
Or there's something wrong with your house. It's
Right,
somehow
right.
leaving dirty dishes.
Yeah,
in the
yeah. Oh, you got this terrible house, dude.
Here.
There's dishes everywhere.
Here, fix it with this medication.
I think I just want to add to that talking all about how much agency we have, that's been a big theme so far. You are not responsible for your thoughts, but to say
Right.
that more precisely,
Yeah.
you are not responsible for your first thought.
Yes. Yes.
And your second and third thoughts, the ones that reflect how you choose to dwell on it,
Right.
you're absolutely responsible for that. Those will create cycles,
Right.
and that will cause damage.
Right.
But it's the first thoughts you have control over. And if you are submitting to cycles of death,
Right.
that can be on you a little bit, but it's
Right.
not you that started the fire.
Right.
Right. So you're
Yeah.
responsible, right? But you're not the guy who started it. So let's
Yes.
find the guy who started the fire. Let's put the fire out,
Right.
and let's be watchful.
Yeah.
That's what I want from this episode, is this attitude of watchfulness.
Yeah.
That there's something we're defending against.
Absolutely. Joel.
And then to bring back Micah's metaphor of the radio, I think that's a really good picture because you can retune the radio,
Yeah.
right? And there you have different options of incoming signals that you can choose to tune in or tune out.
Right.
And so no, you're not responsible for those things coming in, but also like over time you can start to shift what you're paying attention to and what you're focusing to.
Yep.
Retuning the radio, because there are also good things coming from the outside if you tune to the right station, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The Bible has a verse that says, "Take every thought captive." Was that in John or Philippians? Gabriel's pulling up the Bible verse. We're a real podcast now when we got a guy pulling things up on the computer.
We got notes, baby. We upsized.
But I think what's really important about that idea of taking every thought captive, going back to the radio, going back to the house, if a guy's coming in and he's saying, "Hey, check out this awesome, bad thought that I have for you," you can say, "Hey, well, what are you doing in my house? What are you doing here? Get out. Get out with your bad thoughts." My priest always said to me in confession, if I said, "Oh, I had this temptation," or whatever, he would say, "There's, nothing wrong with that first temptation, but if you start thinking and dwelling on it, that is when you begin to sin."
From 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says, "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
Right. So your mental headspace should be a godly place. It should not be full of these evil thoughts or these little goblins. I will tell a brief anecdote. When I became Orthodox, before that, I struggled all my life with really bad intrusive thoughts. I mean, some really weird, either perverted or blasphemous or just nasty stuff. I would have trouble talking to people because it would be distracting me while I was talking to them. And when I went into church and they were singing these prayers and everything, my intrusive thoughts kicked into overdrive. I was getting the most like villainous, just vile, evil thoughts you can imagine. And then I suddenly had this mental image of a goblin that had been hiding inside of my headspace this whole time, and he was finally feeling pain, and he was burning, and so he was trying to hurt me. He was trying to stop me from burning him. And so I started going to every single service. You know, the Orthodox Church has services throughout the week. I would go to every service I could because it was like chemotherapy. I was like, haha, this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me.
Yeah.
And I would go there and pray and sing as I'm having these insane, intrusive thoughts. And then they went away. Because demons are also cowards and bullies, and they really cannot stand up against the power of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, this really connects to what I was saying earlier about a worldview that gives you a course of action.
Yeah.
Right. So Freud came up with this idea that there's the id and the superego. So the id is basically all those temptations or desires that you have, right? And it's part of you. And then there's the superego, and you have to like push down the id with the superego. So that was his idea. And that's not that doesn't really give you a very good course of action. But if you picture this little demon in your head, you immediately know what to do.
Get him out. And that moves us on to our second portion, where we're going to talk about how to have a healthy spiritual life. Remember, virtue and valor, physical and spiritual, we all know about how to be healthy physically. But now we also need to know how to be healthy in the unseen world. The very first thing I want to talk about is what kind of music are you listening to? Music is the language of the soul, and music is a very powerful vector for, I think, our mental and spiritual state. Hence why, rock concerts, church services, movies, all of these are very careful what music they choose. I really do believe that listening to the wrong kind of music can really mess you up. It really invites those demons in. Where if you're listening to, a cool classic rock pop song, but we all know what they're singing about. They're all singing about fornication and drugs. That's not good for you in the long run. That's like leaving the door open for the goblins, or even letting them in. Listening to, violent, aggressive, angry rap music. I do actually like some rap music. I think it can be a very fun medium.
Yeah.
But you have to be incredibly careful because I think rap especially is a very aggressive, angry medium, and there's so much of the passions flowing through that. You have to really be careful what songs you're listening to. And so the very first thing that I think you can do as just a regular Joe to improve your headspace is change the music you're listening to things that are calming and spiritual and godly. Yes, Will.
I think you're spot on, Micah.
Mm-hmm.
If I can take another step back, though, to see the point from a larger angle, I think the idea you're trying to communicate is that the media you take in influences you spiritually. And Gabriel, you mentioned the term like spiritual climate
I like
earlier. And I really agree with that like there is a spiritual environment you live in as well. It's not just your mental room too, but there's more going on. And, I don't think rap is a satanic medium.
Right.
But maybe there are a lot of troubled people who do that, who are popular.
Right.
And that can trouble you in some way too.
Absolutely.
Right? I think the idea isn't to cut off rap or cut off rock or cut off this stuff. I think the idea is to be a discerning people.
Yeah.
Who, learn to try to take stock of what they're eating and go, how does this sit on me?
Bingo.
Is this affecting me well? And should I continue in this, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard stories too of I have a pastor friend who had a ritual of watching the show Friends most evenings with his wife, and it was a great time. But that was the show is kind of suggestive.
Oh yeah.
And that led him to a place where he was having more temptation.
Yeah.
And he realized, it's not that the temptation was because of Friends.
Right.
But that was an environment he was putting himself in.
Yeah.
That led him to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So I think the core of your idea, Micah, is to be aware of the media you're taking in and what that's doing to you.
Yes.
And just to be a mindful person.
on the other hand, it's important not to extrapolate it too far and say, okay, well, I'm never going to hang out with sinners or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, certainly the stuff that you listen to and the people you're around and the stuff you take in, it affects you in very real ways. But we're also called to be with people who are hurting and be with people who are not healthy. I think the really important thing here is like, don't make really unhealthy people your closest friends. You need community who is healthy, and you need to listen to, good music, and you need to do the good things enough that you have the capacity to go to those situations where there's the spirit of darkness, and you have the capacity to bring light there instead of just being overcome by the darkness.
100%.
And you remain a light yourself by staying connected to God, by praying. There's this picture in the Bible of us being lamps, right? And we are burning the oil, and that oil is the Holy Spirit. So if we are connecting ourselves enough to the oil through, both direct like prayer and Bible reading and stuff, and also through a really healthy community, then we have the capacity to go into very dark places and bring light. But if you're just listening to terrible music all the time, just for fun, and watching terrible movies because you think it won't affect you, it's like you're not in those contexts for any good purpose. That's just what you're drinking in. And so it's very important to change those and be intaking really healthy spiritual things.
Absolutely. The whole point of being someone noble and being a source of light and hope for other people is that we offer them something that this disgusting, evil world can't offer them. And like Gabriel said, that means being a vector for the Holy Spirit. And I think that's where the hope starts to come in when we think about the unseen world. It's very easy to focus on demons and ghouls and goblins and the negative parts of the spiritual world. But the truth is, we are vectors of the everlasting beauty and the infinite joy and the undying light that shines into the darkness and cannot be overcome. And so I want to keep this a source of encouragement that once we become aware that we are in this war zone, this occupied country, it's been taken over by the goblins, but you can be a vector of the light. You can be a part of something unconquerable and something that is going to bring the light back to this oppressed land.
And I think that ties really well into, like what Gabriel just said of like in what you said, Gabriel, I heard a bit of this wisdom I've heard that if you want to set intelligent goals, effective goals, set approach goals and not just avoidance goals.
Yeah.
So don't just try to not take in any bad media and then you'll be a good person somehow.
Right.
Like, no, you'll be a vacuum. And you'll probably be bored, which will make you more susceptible to sin.
Right.
Right. But instead, like, fill yourself with good stuff.
Yeah.
And so, like Gabriel said, like reading the word, like praying, like spending time with godly people.
Yeah.
And, engaging in like healthy and challenging discussions like this.
Yeah.
And it's about filling your time and your heart with good things.
The spiritual world, it is just as subservient to rules as the physical world is. Water is always wet. Stones are always hard. And, the Bible says to test the spirits. So this, you like science, you can actually apply, the laws of science and testing to spirits to see whether or not something is of God or not. I think that oftentimes when we make media or stories or songs, or even when we're just close to someone, we can communicate our spirit, or maybe a spirit we're a vector for a spirit. And the good news is you can be a vector of the Holy Spirit, or you can be a vector for evil spirits. A really great example I like to use is when a Scottish guy was building houses for the Peace Corps in Zimbabwe, I believe it was. Not Zimbabwe, South Africa, because the people he was working with were Zulu. And you really can't imagine a farther cultural and racial difference than a red-haired, pale-skinned guy singing in Gaelic as he works to the dark-skinned Zulu. But a Zulu girl would say, listening to his Gaelic singing, she said, "I have no idea what he's saying, but when he sings, I cry." and her soul responded to something that her mind could not comprehend. That actually is why I specifically joined this Russian Orthodox church, is because my mind was very troubled. It was a very dark place. And I walked into a service that I could not understand. They were singing in an ancient language, Slavonic. My soul felt so warm, and I felt it in my body. My something inside of me was reacting to something I couldn't process or understand. So I would say that I think the spiritual world is objective. It's not subjective. There are good and evil spirits. I think that some of us are more susceptible to some spirits than others. So like maybe one guy can watch a movie and he'll be okay, the next can't. That's where I think in the Bible they talk about stumbling blocks. This idea that something might not be appropriate for one guy, another guy can handle it. But I think it is very, very valuable to see things as having a spirit flowing through them or attached to them. And so when you're watching a movie, maybe there's some swearing, maybe there's some, more thematic elements, but you can ask yourself, what is the spirit of this? What is the author trying to communicate? And I think you can usually tell if the spirit of something is good or evil. If they're trying to move you towards God and nobility, or whether they're trying to move you towards degeneracy and the devil. Yes, Joel.
I think maybe that makes me think maybe I should requalify something I said earlier. How it sits with you, right, is the important thing, is what I said. But also, like, I think that should take thought. It shouldn't just be, what is my emotional reaction to things? Because how it sits with you, in the moment versus how it sits with you, what that message that it's doing, that is communicating, is doing to your
to your soul.
Conscious.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with you, Micah, that sometimes we just need to turn our brains off, right? If we're in the right environment, it's not about coming to the right belief by thinking.
Right.
Sometimes it's just about drinking in the spiritual goodness, and you don't have to understand it to receive it.
And that's something that, it's just really funny. You can see how music can affect people even when you don't understand the words, like you're saying, Joel. You don't know what the words are saying, but you still love the song. Why is that? It's not something cerebral. It's not that you're understanding it. It's that you're feeling it in your soul.
And there's this, just to add to that thing about music, there's this Russian guy that I listen to, Simon Khorolsky, who's...
he's great.
Yeah, he's great. So I listen to some of his Russian songs, and I will say, like, I'll listen to songs in other languages that are not Christian, and I think I can appreciate the musical sound, and the bad words don't affect me, right? Because I don't know what they're saying. But I will say, when I listen to something that I know is Christian by someone who, I know is genuinely praising God through this music, like, I can appreciate it even if I don't understand what he's saying. And that can be spiritually edifying in a way that this secular music in other languages is not.
Yeah. And I think you can usually kind of feel it too.
I agree.
You can kind of tell. We have to wrap up because we're running out of time. So I'll be moving towards our conclusion. I heard this, I didn't make this up, someone else told it to me. But they said, be a bee and not a fly. What do bees do, right? They find beautiful flowers and they collect the pollen and they go industriously and they turn into honey. And we, as humans, enjoy the honey. And they are the creators of so much good. And they also pollinate the flowers in our crops. Like, we really couldn't survive without bees. Bees are the vectors of life. Flies, on the other hand, are constantly seeking out, poop and garbage and disgusting things. And what do flies do? They spread disease. They spread germs. They are the vectors of disease. So we kill flies, but we love bees. We understand that bees are the agents of life. Flies are the agents of death. In my own personal life, I can get absorbed into online forums, onto YouTube channels talking about the evils of the world, just really get focused in on just things that might be technically true, but are very spiritually damaging to my soul. Getting bent out of shape about, what people are doing, what godless people are doing, how society is falling apart, how the West is doomed. I can be filled with hatred and rage and fill my mind with degenerate things. And then I go, what do? Well, if you talk to me, I'm going to start spewing that back out. I'm going to be carrying around all this negativity and darkness. And I might even be doing it out of a sense of I'm trying to save the world, but in reality, I'm a vector of darkness and anger and hate. Or I can be a bee. I can focus on the beauty that God has in this world, on the spiritual light, on the joy, the kindness, the gentleness, the hope, the healing, and become a vector of life. It's just very important to keep a mind on your spiritual well-being. What did you call it, Gabriel? Your spiritual environment or climate?
Climate. Yeah.
You know,
Climate.
what kind of environment are you keeping your mind in? Because that's going to change very dramatically how you're able to behave in the physical world. It really does affect you if you're filling your mind with dark things versus bright things, and then being able to be that vector of beauty. Will, you mentioned how the material world tries to shame us for thinking about things in a magical term. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but I particularly am a very dramatic guy. I'm very theatrical. I'm really in love with story. And so very often I will try to adopt this mindset. I'll try to jump into it, right? And very often I'll try to inspire myself or someone else with a perspective that's almost mythical,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of the faith that we're called into, right?
Yeah.
There is a great war at play.
Right.
There are dark forces out there,
Right.
and you have a part to play in it.
Right.
That's pretty mythical and pretty epic, and that's pretty
Yeah.
dramatic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like it's a very pervasive. I think it's like American, like adult, grown up idea, but it's maybe everywhere that that's a child's thing,
Right.
right? Those stories are child's things. That
Right.
in real life, you buckle down, you get a job,
Right.
you don't follow your emotions,
Right.
you make some money,
Right.
right? And there's this sense I have of like quieting wonder,
Yes.
which feels like
Yes.
it's very damaging to my faith
Right.
because I feel healthiest when I'm pulled up
Right.
into the wonderful story.
Right.
And when I do remember that I have an innate purpose,
Right.
that God has made me with something in mind,
Right.
and that He is ravenously in love with me,
Yeah.
and that He wants me, and that He wants me to be involved, that's so good for me.
Yeah.
But I've noticed there's this poison that seeps in that starts quieting me, like, oh no, like that's like, don't be so childish.
Right.
But I think I remember, and it has to be in its context, but in some ways Jesus wants us to have faith like children,
Yeah.
like little ones, right? And I think there is some truth of that here,
Yeah.
where I think He wants you to be willing to believe grand things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a kind of wonder that children have that we so often lose as adults. One thing I will say that's good about growing up is you can actually keep wonder for longer if you do it right. Like I have a 1-year-old and she'll bring me a book and want me to read it to her, and then 2 pages in she'll wander off looking at something else, right?
Yeah.
So if you grow up properly, your wonder can you can not only retain your childish wonder, but transform it into an even better form of wonder where you can commit to maybe some creative project or some beautiful endeavor, and you can keep at it through hardship, through all kinds of pain. You can stick to it for an entire lifetime. To me, that is what wonder is meant to turn into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to add on that, another thing that can increase our wonder as we get older is just learning. Often we feel a sense of wonder when we start out in learning something, and then sometimes it feels like our wonder goes away when we learn a little bit more. But one of the things I've noticed sometimes after that, we realize that, wait, I thought I had learned it all.
Yeah.
And now I realize that there was so much more to
much
learn.
more. Yeah.
And so that can even reintroduce wonder because the more you know about something, the more complicated it actually becomes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another way in which,
Boom.
as grown-ups, we can actually experience more wonder because we realize that the world we understand a lot of the world, and yet the part that we don't understand just became,
So much.
100 times bigger.
Right. There's
Yeah.
so much more. And that's kind of what this whole point is of the unseen world. How much we don't even know,
The more you learn, the more you know you don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in conclusion, what I want to charge you, good viewers or listeners, what I want to charge you, good listeners, with is to challenge yourself to begin seeing the world not as just the material, but as a place where unseen actors and agents are vying for your soul. in very realistic, everyday moments. You have a tempting thought. You have an angry thought. Maybe it's a temptation to be angry at someone. Maybe it's a temptation to feel sorry for yourself, or to lust, or to be greedy or angry. Stop seeing that as something wrong with you. Start rejecting those thoughts as outside influences, as an invasion of your sacred space. Pray to God for help to love people. That was another proof that I had as a young man that God was real, was no matter how angry I was at someone, if I prayed to God to give me love, I would feel love for them. Pray to God for love. Pray for God to help you against those evil attacks. Then going a little deeper into it, not only pray to God, but take responsibility for your spiritual climate and start trying to change the things that you're letting into your life. Take your thoughts captive, change the media, or start analyzing the media that you're letting into your life. Yeah, Joel.
I have actually a story about that. It's super brief.
Yeah, yeah.
I just remember this one time where I was experiencing a lot of temptation. And for some reason, I thought, well, maybe there's a spiritual component to this. And so I prayed, and in one sense, it was a very cautious prayer. I said something like, God, if there are spiritual beings trying to get me to do something wrong, would you use your power to restrain them? And that prayer just worked instantly. And so, that's one story.
Wow.
Doesn't always happen that way. But, Gabriel mentioned, the picture that is more helpful in
Right.
giving you an action is probably the better picture. And I just think that illustrates, this is one example where that becomes very true, right? When you think of the world in this spiritual way, you know how to pray, and those prayers can often be super effective.
Yeah. If you're not yet convinced that, that there are spiritual forces on you, the next time you're struggling with, whatever it is that's bothering you, just pray. Pray to God for help. And you might be taken by surprise by how quickly things change. A funny thing for me in my journey of resisting sexual temptation, it was really funny. Sometimes I was afraid to pray or hesitant to pray because I knew if I did, all of the sort of attitude of sexual temptation that I was in would disappear. And so I could see my own unrepentance because I was hesitant to pray. That stuff really is out there, and just give it a shot. Start praying very specifically for the thoughts and the attitudes that you are experiencing or struggling with. But I really do want to hammer home. You have to take responsibility for your spiritual climate, and you have to be making sure it's not full of dark or bad or evil things.
I really agree that with that idea of like naming it, right? Of praying in a mindful way, and like Joel said, maybe like opening it up.
Right.
I love how you said, Joel, that like it was even like kind of cautious,
Yeah.
It was still kind of reserved.
Yeah.
You weren't like, demon, get out. You were like, God, if there is any kind of that kind of force, maybe like, pressing on me. But it's still surprising how that just like makes a difference.
Right.
So that's what I love about this journey.
Yeah.
Because for myself, I was really careful to start getting into that kind of language.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be authoritative and to be wrong.
Yeah.
That feels very dangerous. But it was very healing to have experiences like Joel just mentioned.
Absolutely.
Where I would still pray to God.
Right.
And I would just pray to God and try to find peace in my soul and be still with Him.
Right.
But I would bring the spiritual world into the conversation.
Right.
And that really lit things up for me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how sometimes, like not always, right?
Yeah.
It's not that when you start praying about spirits, you'll stop having problems.
Right.
But sometimes that would make the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we don't have the power to drive out demons.
Right.
But God does, right?
Right.
So don't take this whole mentality and then try to work it out in your own strength.
Right.
Try to get rid of those goblins all on your own. Like,
Right.
No, take this mentality and let it affect your prayers, right? Because God's the one with the power to actually drive these things out.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I will close with a tale that may be familiar to many of you, but I will still enjoy the telling of it. There was once a wise Indian chieftain who defended his tribe for many years from enemies of all kinds, from the white man coming every year farther and farther west, or the other tribes. However, he grew old, and he knew that he was going to die soon. So he took his son with him on a hunting journey, led him deep into the mountains, and following the sounds of the howling of the wolves, till at last they found a pack of wolves, and in silence they watched them. Sooner or later, two of the wolves challenged each other for dominance, began snapping at each other, and the other wolves gathered around in a circle to let them fight it out, as they do. Finally, the chieftain spoke to his son and said, "Inside of me there are two wolves. One is kindness, compassion, love, unselfishness, courage. The other is hate, greed, lust, envy, sloth. And these two wolves are fighting over my soul. And in every single one of us, there are these two wolves snapping and lunging and making rushes and bites and trying to kill the other in a struggle to the death." And the boy says, "Well, which wolf will win?" And the chieftain replies, "The one you feed." So go forth, my good listeners. Feed the good wolf. Don't feed the goblin. Kick him out of your house. Don't let him make a mess. And as always, pray to God for help. This has been Virtue and Valor.